The London system is an opening I used to play and now I kind of left it, but it's still pretty popular and I think you should maybe play it if you can, if you want to. So it starts with d4 and d5, and the whole point of bishop f4 is to develop quickly, normally with e3, c3, knight d2, and knight f3, and bishop d3. And usually white goes for an attack on the king side, and it's mostly like this, with knight f3, knight e5, and since the e pawn has moved, your queen can go here and queen h3 to attack the h7 square. So for an example, I could maybe first show the maybe like this, just a little line. Maybe e6, knight f3, and bishop g3 is a common move because here taking this wouldn't be so good. You can even take with the c pawn, opening up the c file and preparing to play e5 with knight c3, and his center would be pretty big. So bishop d3 is probably the best. Another move is knight d2, and it's a nice one. You can play g3, c3, and you have strong control over the e5 square. But I still think bishop d3 is the safest. And so if we continue like this, maybe something like this. And okay, well, I kind of actually did it wrong. The bishop's supposed to be on e7, but I'll put it again. Maybe something like this. This position. And now say maybe whatever he plays, maybe c4, or maybe just say a6, maybe. Taking and b5, expanding on the center. And now you can play queen f3, and the whole point is to go queen h3. And it attacks the h7 pawn, and there were some nice games on this, but the line I'm going to show you for this video is the Steinitz Countergambit. I think it's called the Countergambit. So, yeah. Because here you can take, but that would be an inaccuracy or a mistake. So it's kind of like the Queen's Gambit, but it's not really Gambit. If you take the pawn, he'll get it back. But this is a more extreme example, I guess. So some people play c3 against this, but I don't think it's so good. Because now he can check you and do a lot of stuff with this pin. And he also has the open c file to attack your knight. So that's why I think that e3 is better. So you usually use the e pawn to capture back on d4 if they take on d4. So he develops, and there are a few ways for white to play. One is c3, which is solid, but I don't really like how it runs into this. And here, white is forced to go into this. And I'm pretty sure here, if white plays queen c2, there's a nice trap for black here, which is bishop f5. And it's not so great. But there is a line that white probably has to be kind of aware about. And okay, that's not a good say he plays. Maybe castling queenside. I kind of saw that from a book. And it's better for white here, so bishop f5 is not so great, I think. Yeah, it's plus 2.2. But it's just an idea for black. Although you probably don't want to give, well, you don't want black to have ideas. But overall, if he didn't have this move, it's not good. So if like knight f6 was included, white would be losing. So here it's actually a little better for white, but that's mostly an idea. So here, white doesn't have many moves, so the computer suggestion is e4, and it's still not that great. But the whole point is if he takes on e4, that would be a blunder because you can take on c4 and he has isolated queen b pawns, and this a file doesn't do anything anymore because white can play knight a3, knight b5, and black doesn't have anything. But like if he goes here, now it's a little hard for white. So maybe knight d2, b5, and he can attack on the queen side, which is not so great for white. And overall, I just don't really like c3. So I usually play knight f3, and I'm recommending it here. Because here, if black tries queen b6, you can play knight c3, which is an interesting line. You're kind of baiting black into a losing position if he really takes the pawn. Because now if he takes, you can take on d5, you win back the pawn, and you're also winning. And, well, here it's just winning. There's not much. I don't know, but maybe queen b6 is the best going into this. I don't know. But it's just losing. If black tries king d8, you don't have to even go there. You can even take this, and the d file's open, and, well, black's dead already. So that's why probably here it's not so great for black to play queen b6. So here there are a lot of options for black. There is knight f6, there is bishop d4, I think, yeah, and there's also e6 and c takes d4. Let's first start with knight f3. So knight f3, knight f6, and c3. So you have your triangle now, and you can play knight d2, bishop d3. But here if he plays queen b6, queen c2 is actually okay. Because after this, there's... Okay, well first, queen b6, queen b3 is not good anymore. This is what I meant by the last example where he could play bishop f5. Because now if c4, queen c2, bishop f5, the move knight f6 is here. So now if you take, you can't take on d5, and now you're gonna lose your rook, so then you're losing. And that's why here, after queen b6, queen c2 is better. But if black tries bishop f5 again, here there's a nice tactic, or counterattack, I guess, which is d takes c5. So now if queen takes c5, you win the bishop, because there's no threat on b2. And if he takes your queen, this is similar to, well, it's not, this is similar to the last or whatever example. I'm kind of already lost, but it's around here, I think, if he took this and, well, e4. The problem with white's position here is that black has a lot more, has a better grip on c4. And in this example, in here, black doesn't even have a c4 pawn. And there should be a pawn on d4, and that would make it a lot harder for white to do anything, which is why this is better for white. So knight a3, bishop a4, because if he goes back, knight b4 would be devastating. Knight b5. So bishop a4, and you go here anyways. You can play rook a5 if you want, but this is probably better for white. This bishop, well, okay. b3 isn't a good move because of the pin, but white can prepare b3 with maybe rook b1, or maybe just try to get the knight back. Knight c7 is not good. Knight bd4 is better, yeah. Because, well, here, just guess who's better? White has a much more active position, and his pawn structure is also way better. So that's the response to knight f6, which is c3, queen b6, and queen c2. Because here, if bishop f5 takes and takes, and he has a worse version of another line. So here he has another line. Bishop g4 would probably be the best and most annoying line for white. But here you can continue with c3. And c takes d4, e takes d6, knight d2, and bishop d6. Bishop g3, and you just continue with your development. It's really almost the same for every line. And a big point of the London is to control the e5 square, but that's why bishop g4 is a good move. So if he plays bishop h5, maybe wanting to go here, well, that would give us the e5 square. So you play queen b3, getting out of the pin. So this pin isn't so strong anyways, so bishop h5 is a good move. He's gonna go back here after you break the pin. Queen b3, rook b8, and it's actually kind of a nice move, this queen b3 move. It's kind of hard to understand, but so say if you play knight e5, because, well, what can you do here? If you play rook c1, that's fine, but I think knight e5 is a little better. They're alternative move workers anyways. So rook e c8, and this rook doesn't really want to be here, because, well, if it pushes b5, it's not going to do anything. So you're going to play rook a c1. If he plays b5, you can just go here, bishop takes, and, well, it's fairly equal for both sides. He can probably continue with his minority attack, and, well, you can annoy him with your knight e5, and f5 would be. Knight f5, f4, f5 would be a good one. So you just gotta attack on the king side. So here maybe knight e5. If he plays b4, you can just maybe push this. Although the c3 pawn would be a little weak, I think f4 is still fine. So then, I think this is pretty nice for white. You can maybe push c4, and if he plays this, his play on the queen side isn't that big anymore. And okay, maybe he can exchange that, but f5's coming, and, well, at least your attack is still alive. His is almost broken. He can play a5, a4, but still kind of useless. Both sides have the a file. So he can also play something maybe like e6, and you can play c4 because e6 is a passive move. Like other moves like bishop g4, at least they were doing something. e6 kinda blocks in the bishop and not much for black here. So white can strike in the center with c4. And if black wants to create isolated passed pawn, no, isolated queen's pawn, you can just take on c5 because if you play bishop takes c4, you're gonna get an isolated queen's pawn anyways, and your position's not good. So d takes c5, queen takes, king takes, and after you trade off the two pawns, the f4 bishop, the c4 bishop is better than the c8 bishop. And although white can't castle, it doesn't really matter. So I think this is pretty nice for white too. So now we come to the last option for black, which is c takes d4. Now e takes d4, knight f6, c3, and bishop f5. I think this is the most not passive, the most active move. Other moves like e6, I don't think it's great. So bishop f5, queen b3, and queen c8, knight d2, e6, and knight h4. It's a pretty common idea, and if he doesn't care about his bishop, just look at his pawn structure. Double left pawns and an isolated queen's pawn with no real kingside attack. So here, white can play g3 and attack this. He can also attack the f5 pawn with maybe bishop d3. And if he castles, you can maybe even play this queen c2. So say something like this. Okay, that his queen's under attack. That's not good. Say if he goes here, he weakens his dark squares, and what you normally do against a fianchetto type of structure is to play h4. And if black plays something random like this, h5 I think it might not be winning, but I'm pretty sure it's winning. Oh wait, not queen c7. But yeah, these bishops are a lot stronger. They do look strong. Black, it's probably lost already. And I forgot about this last line, which is g6. And it's slightly dubious because normally the bishop is supposed to develop here. c3, bishop g7, knight d2, and queen b6. You can play queen b3, and a major difference here is that you can play queen a3. Here you can't play queen c2 because now you're a lot worse. But you can play queen a3, which is a really nice idea, which is one of the disadvantages for black, having the bishop not on f8 and playing e5. Well, it's just like if the bishop was on f8, he can win a piece. So here maybe, if you want to go back, which is the top engine move, you can actually play b4 and he's losing. Not that big, but he's losing by a few, I don't even know what you call it, but he's not losing. What am I saying? And well, here, I think it's probably better for white. Just look at this pawn structure and compare it to ours. he has a lot more pawns on the light squares, and that's not good. And also, nothing's developed here. And that might not seem so big, but you can play h4 again. So that's nice. And, well, this was kind of like, I don't know, an introduction to the Steinitz Countergambit. You can probably look at some of the lines by yourself, and I think that's about it for this video. And just again, the London system with the Steinitz Countergambit is like this, and now I recommend knight f3, knight f6, and c3, queen and queen b6, and well, it's a pretty nice line for white. So I think that concludes my video, and yeah, I don't think this was a good one, but watch it anyway.